Imagine this. You're 18, exhausted, driving a company truck through the empty Canadian backroads before dawn. Out of the corner of your eye, your supervisor, the man who spent 3 months humiliating you, sleeps with his mouth open, reeking of whiskey, dreaming peacefully while you work yourself to the bone. Now imagine the moment he wakes up to the sound of a semi-truck's air horn screaming into his soul, and your voice yelling, "Gary, we are going to die." Yeah, he picked the wrong kid to break. If you've ever had someone abuse their power, someone who thought they could belittle you forever, then hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you believe in poetic justice, and settle in, because today's story is one of the most intensely deserved revenge moments you'll ever hear. I was 18, fresh out of high school and desperate for a real job. Something that paid more than the $6 minimum wage that swallowed kids like me whole. So when I got hired in the Canadian oil patch, earning $20 an hour with no degree, I felt like I had finally broken into a life I wasn't supposed to have. We did well testing, hard work, dangerous work, 4-man crews, 12-hour shifts, long, empty roads through the countryside. And on my very first assignment, I got paired with Gary. Gary was in his mid-50s, a heavy-set man with a beer belly that strained the seams of his dusty coveralls. His eyes were small, mean, and permanently swollen from decades of drinking. His voice sounded like gravel dragged across concrete, and he hated me on sight. From the first hour on the job, he made sure I knew exactly where he believed I belonged, below him. Not professionally, not strategically, but as a human being. He insulted me casually, like it was as natural as breathing. "Use your brain, kid, if you've got one. God, you really are useless, aren't you? You don't know how to use a power drill? What the hell did your dad teach you?" I made the mistake of answering honestly. My dad wasn't around much. Gary didn't even blink. Next time I messed something up, he smirked and said, "No wonder your dad walked out." I would have too. It was a punch to the soul. But at 18, you don't know how to defend yourself against a man who looks like he's been angry since before you were born. I didn't fight back. I swallowed it, silent, numb, because I needed the job. Every morning, we drove up to 350 kilometers to reach our sites. Gary got paid by the kilometer, an extra dollar for every one we traveled, and he never wanted to drive. He was always hungover, slumped in his seat like a corpse bloated with gin. I drove while he slept, drooling into his collar, stinking of cheap whiskey and stale cigarettes. I earned minimum wage for travel time. He earned hundreds. That was the dynamic. I broke my back lifting equipment alone. He did the bare minimum. And every mistake, every misstep, every breath I took became another excuse for him to mock me behind his sunglasses. He wasn't just belittling me. He was enjoying it. 3 months in, we were eating dinner at a small-town bar. One of those places where the booths stick to your clothes and the jukebox hasn't played anything newer than 1988. Gary was already 2 drinks deep, his friendly phase. The phase where he pretended to be a good man simply because vodka warmed his bloodstream. I chose the wrong moment to speak. "Hey Gary, you know, since I drive us every day, maybe you could throw a few bucks my way?" His whole face shifted, the warmth evaporated, and something cold and venomous surfaced. "What was that, kid?" I swallowed hard. "I mean, you get paid for the kilometers." "I don't. Just thought maybe." "You ungrateful little shit." It didn't escalate gradually. It detonated. He tore into me, loud, cruel, calling me entitled, spoiled, stupid, telling me I should be grateful he even let me touch his truck. And then, in a low voice that cut deeper than his shouting, "You say one more thing like that, I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." For the first time in years, I felt tears burn behind my eyes. Not from sadness, from a kind of helpless rage that builds when every escape route is locked. That night, something in me cracked. I wasn't going to take this anymore. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. But sometimes, fate hands you an opportunity too perfect to ignore. The next morning, Gary climbed into the truck, as hungover as usual. His eyes were bloodshot slivers. His breath smelled like something had died in a bourbon bottle. He mumbled, "Drive. and within seconds he was unconscious, dead weight, powerless, completely at my mercy. We were 30 kilometers from the site when I saw it. A semi-truck pulled over at a rest stop, idling, its driver standing outside, stretching his legs. And in an instant, a plan snapped together in my mind, clear, sharp, and inevitable. This wasn't petty revenge. This wasn't a prank. This was justice the universe had carved with a neon sign. I pulled over. Gary didn't even twitch. I stepped out, walked up to the trucker, and quietly explained what I needed. He looked at Gary slumped in the passenger seat, then back at me, and nodded with a grin that told me he understood exactly what kind of man Gary must be. He climbed into his semi. I climbed back into Gary's truck, and the stage was set. I maneuvered the truck until we were parked directly in front of the semi, nearly bumper to bumper, facing each other like two bulls ready to charge. Gary didn't wake. Of course he didn't. He only woke when he wanted to. I looked at the trucker. He looked at me, and I gave the signal. The semi's air horn exploded. Not a honk, not a blast. A detonation that shook the air itself. The sound hit the truck like a physical force. Windows rattled. My bones vibrated, and the world became a tunnel of pure, primal noise. I added my own horn, and over the screaming machinery, I shouted with every ounce of fear I could fake. Gary, Gary, wake up. We are going to die. The effect was instant and unforgettable. Gary didn't wake. He launched. His head smashed the ceiling so hard the whole truck shuddered. His eyes bulged with terror, his hands clawing at the dashboard as he screamed like an animal dragged into fire. For a moment he wasn't the man who mocked my father, or the man who belittled me, or the man who abused his authority. He was just a terrified bully realizing the world could hit back. And God. It was justice. I reversed, peeling away from the semi as Gary sputtered, swore, and tried to form coherent death threats that kept dissolving on his tongue. He was purple with rage and fear, shaking, humiliated. You could have killed me. I have high blood pressure. I just laughed. If that's true, Gary, you should probably calm down. Can't you take a joke? His face twisted, a grotesque knot of fury and shame, and for the first time in 3 months, I felt free. By the time we reached the site, he could barely speak, just short, broken bursts of rage. He stormed out of the truck, slammed the door, and shouted, "You're fired. I'm calling the owner. I'm getting the cops." I leaned against the truck, lit a cigarette, and let the cold morning air fill my lungs with the sweetness of victory. 4 hours later, the company owner arrived. Gary had apparently told him some unhinged story about attempted murder involving a semi-truck conspiracy. The owner, who had heard plenty of Gary's antics over the years, took one look at me and said, "What actually happened?" So I told him all of it. And when I finished, he didn't yell. He didn't scold. He didn't fire me. He laughed. A full belly, tears in his eyes laugh. Then he said, "Yeah, Gary had that coming. He moved me to a new crew, one that actually respected me. And Gary? He never looked at me again. But the rest of the company? They knew. And for the first time, the quiet kid without a father, the kid who didn't fight back, had a story whispered about him with awe. Looking back, I didn't hurt Gary. I didn't ruin his career. I didn't even touch him. I simply gave him a taste of the fear he'd spent years inflicting on others. Sometimes revenge isn't about anger. Sometimes it's about reclaiming the power someone stole from you, and proving that even the smallest voice can echo louder than a bully's roar. If this story hit you the way it hit me, smash that like button. Tell us in the comments, what's the worst abuse of power you've ever witnessed? And how did karma come for the person who caused it? And don't forget to subscribe for more deeply satisfying stories, where justice doesn't just arrive, it thunders in. If you'd like, I can also create